to talk to me and with Charlie here as well this afternoon. I'm just curious, before we get into the details, have you ever done a market research interview before?
I have not.
Great. So first time. All right, that'll be
fun.
We have just a small hazing routine. No, I'm just kidding. Well, you'll be just fine. You'll be just fine.
It's not a good time anymore.
All of a sudden, she needs to get off the phone. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully, we'll make it we'll make it interesting for everybody. So let me just introduce who I am. My name is Becca. I am a moderator. I work for an independent market research consulting firm. I'm here with Charlie, who you've already been emailing with. I believe she is also from my firm. We've been asked to conduct these interviews with agents on behalf of Mercury Insurance, but we are our own independent firm. We do not work for Mercury. Most important thing that I need from you today is your open and honest opinion. I'm going to be digging into a lot of details and then asking you to kind of look down from 10,000 feet and really give me a sense of what you're thinking about when you're quoting and writing auto insurance policies, kind of what's important to you, what choices you make or don't make. I'm obviously going to want to find out how Mercury fits in with other carriers in terms of, you know, what's good, what's not so good, kind of how do they stack up to the competition there. A few rules of the road. I am audio recording this interview, and the interview will be transcribed. These are for market research purposes only. This has the primary role of giving us a clear record of our conversation because we're speaking to many agents all over the country, and it's really helpful for us to just have it all in one place when we're all done. The audio recording will remain with our firm, Helical Research, and we understand you are comfortable with our a redacted transcript being shared with Mercury, and that means we would transcribe the audio file for the interview. We would remove your first name, agency name, any reference to specific Mercury insurance contacts, and geographic location before sharing that. Okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Perfect. Finally, the last thing is, after we've done all these interviews and we've got all these, recordings and transcripts that we then need to dig through and try to figure out what we need to report back to Mercury, and we're going to tell them sort of broad themes in terms of what we see that's going on. From time to time, it really helps bring our report to life if we can add in quotes, verbatim quotes from people we talk to. It might be you, it might be other people I talk to. And again, if we ever include a quote in our report, it would be from that redacted transcript, and it wouldn't have any of that information in there I said before that would sort of say, hey, this is Stacy talking. Okay?
Okay, that sounds good.
Great. Good. Okay. So let's get some stats from you to start, if I could. How long have you been in the industry, and how long have you been with your current agency?
I've been in the industry 6+ years, and I'm also with the same agency. We're a family-owned and operated agency. So
okay, great. So how many people are in your agency?
We have a total. Let's see. Well, we have 4 agents and 1 sub-agent, and then we have a bookkeeper that's kind of part-time, which is actually my mom. So, what is it, 6 of us?
Yeah, 6 people, 1 of whom. Okay, great, but 4 agents. And what state are you located in?
We're in Georgia.
Georgia, okay. What's your title and role with the company?
I'm a producer and a vice president.
Okay, great. What does that mean on the vice president side of things? Are you wearing a lot of hats, having to do stuff outside writing insurance policies?
Yeah, definitely wearing a lot of hats, yes. So I'm in charge of, marketing or doing interviews like this or things like that, yeah. And pretty much anything I need, anything that's needed of me.
Well, that sounds great. How many clients do you have right now?
We have several. I'd rather not give that number out, though.
That is fine. Can you give me a ballpark? Like, is it 50? Is it 5,000? Can you give me a range?
We'll say less than 5,000.
Less than 5,000. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I put myself into that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so today we're really talking about personal auto business, but what other lines do you write?
We write, of course, home, commercial, and that includes general liability, workers' comp, commercial auto. We do a lot of farm insurance, and we offer life, long-term care, disability insurance, but no health insurance.
No health, okay.
Yeah.
So looking across all those different lines, where is your primary focus?
Mine is, as a producer, I'm more the personal lines.
So auto and home?
And life, yeah.
And life, okay. Any one of those three, is it personal in general, or is auto a focus, or home, or life, or is it kind of evenly split?
It's evenly split.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Definitely.
Would you say you're looking to grow, maintain, or reduce the number of clients you have?
Grow.
Grow?
Yeah.
Do you want to grow in a particular line, or do you want to just grow in general, or do you want to grow more in personal? Kind of how does that shake out?
Grow more in personal.
Okay. Great. So now let's talk brass tacks when it comes to personal auto business. So in the past 30 days, or if that's harder to come up with, you can just say sort of in a typical month, how many personal auto policies do you quote per month?
Probably 25 plus.
Okay. Of those, we'll just say 25 for simplicity's sake. Of those 25, how many do you close?
Probably half.
Probably half.
Okay. Yeah, maybe more than half. Just depending on the quotes.
Okay. So just for my simple math right now, I'll say like 15 or something.
Oh yeah, that'll be good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, right. We'll just make up some numbers here. Now, how does that break down in terms of new leads as opposed to requotes for existing customers?
A lot of those are it varies from month to month. So a lot of them are new leads. That we do. We do some requote. And some months, if you're coming up on months where you're at renewals coming out, then it could be more, internal quoting and rewriting. So,
okay. So it's kind of a mix every month. Is it kind of half and half, new versus rewrite?
We could say half and half. It might be a little bit more depending on the months, like as I said. But yeah, half and half. That's fine.
Generous.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's kind of add Mercury into the mix. So if we say you have 25 quotes in a month, for how many of those 25 quotes is Mercury the lowest rate when you're in the rater?
I would say between. Well, they're usually coming third place in the rater, but sometimes that can be a vast difference in the premium. So out of those 25, maybe we'll say twice in those 25.
So twice that they're the absolute lowest, or twice that they're in the top, twice that they're lowest?
Twice that they're lowest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So of those two cases, out of the 25, how many times do you end up selling Mercury?
If they're the lowest, usually we'll always go with that lowest company, so we would sell them if they came out to be the lowest and the best fit for the insured.
So if they're the lowest in the rater, and we'll talk about this process in more detail in a little bit, but if they're the lowest in the rater, of those two, do both of those end up being the lowest once you've bridged over and kind of made any adjustments you need to make?
Oh, yes, yeah. We always bridge over and look in the company itself, go into like Mercury and just make sure that everything's pulled correctly through that rater. And because sometimes when you get into the company, the rate can be different versus that rater. So yeah, we don't rely on that strictly. That's
okay.
Just more. We use our rater more as kind of a guide to point us in which companies are coming up the best, and then we go in and tweak it if we need to.
Okay. And so am I hearing right that if you say in your rater of the 25, in two of the cases Mercury is the lowest, and once you come out of any tweaks you make, Mercury's still the lowest in two after you've made your adjustments?
Usually, yeah.
Okay. So of those two, so I want to get a sense of how many you close. So you say if they close, if they're still the lowest, you would go with Mercury. But you don't have a 100% close ratio. Some close, some don't. So if you had 25 quotes, Mercury is the lowest in two. In a typical month, how many Mercury policies do you actually sell?
Well, that depends. Lately, Mercury has not been hitting really good. So I would say, because I know looking back, the last one we had was actually in June that we closed with on Mercury on the auto side.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. You said lately they're not hitting well. What does that mean?
They're just not being competitive on their rates. The other companies are placing better. As far as the rates go, they're a better fit for the insured and offer quite a bit lower rate than Mercury does.
So when you say your last Mercury auto policy was in June, did something happen in June with their rates, or is June not really a meaningful time period? That just happens to be the last one.
That just happens to be the last one. Yeah. I mean, I know they've had a rate increase. I believe there's been one since. I have to go back and look since that time period, and that could play a factor into it. I mean, there again, a huge factor always plays into what the insured themselves is about, if they're fit as far as the underwriting guidelines, or, how the company rates that particular person with their vehicles. It just really, plays. That's why it's kind of iffy. You never know. Oh, this person's going to be a great fit for Mercury or any company until you run it. But, yeah, I don't think there was anything particular. I think it's just that other companies are just still having better rates than Mercury, and that's what's pushing them out of having that close ratio.
Okay. So what is important to you? And we've already touched on some of it, but I just want to make sure I get everything. What's important to you about a carrier when you're trying to decide which carrier to go with? What kind of, broadly speaking, what are you looking for?
Of course, stability in the company, and that they are going to offer the best coverage to my insured, meet that insured's needs, and then take care of them in the event that there's a claim. And, of course, they're against giving them the best rate.
And the rate.
Yeah.
So let's take each one of those apart. So stability. Tell me what that means.
Just knowing that company's going to be there. Because we have companies, all of our companies are A or A+ rated as far as insurance, how companies are rated. So if we ever had a carrier, let's say Mercury, for example, if it ever dropped below an A, it got into a B, B-, we would no longer do that. Because if you've got a company that's not receiving that good rating, they could pull out of the market. So they're not stable in that, or if you're not seeing any growth, or they begin not to, be competitive with their rates, there's a chance that they'll pull out of the market, out of the state. We've had that happen with other carriers where they just we're leaving Georgia because, it's just not financial gain for them any longer. So that's that stability factor. If you see the company growing, if you see them, being competitive with rates, then this company is going to be around for a little while. They're going to be there to take care of that insured.
Okay. And then you talked about best coverage. So talk to me about what that means. If we're talking about personal auto, are you talking about whatever levels of coverage are appropriate, or are you also talking about things like offering other products like bundling with home or something like that? What do you mean when you say they have the best coverage?
Yeah, with that, of course, Mercury has great coverage as far as the limits of liability they offer. We've had one company that offered really low limits, and that's not something you really want to be able to offer a customer higher limits if they, want to go that way, because you're trying to protect them in the event that they, of course, hit someone. So that's kind of what we're looking for. Where you've got, there's a couple of things that, and I'm sure you'll probably ask me this, that Mercury lacks in their coverage, especially on the auto side, but you still can offer them fairly low deductibles for comprehensive, and they're getting those high limits. So, and also roadside and rental, you can, those are good things. But a lot of people want that. So.
Okay, now you said Mercury, so we can go to that right now. What are some of the ways that Mercury is lacking in some of the what they provide for coverage?
Biggest thing that they lack is not having either offering full glass coverage or offering a lower deductible on a windshield, even if it's a $50 or $100 deductible. Because if you've got an insurer that carries a higher deductible for their comprehensive coverages, and they have a rock hit their windshield, they're pretty much not going to have an option to fix their windshield. So that would definitely be a good thing that maybe Mercury can look at doing, like I said, either that full glass coverage on comprehensive or doing a separate deductible for just glass.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then you said claims, how they handle claims. Tell me what that means. What to you is, an example of a carrier having great claims response?
that once the claim is set up, because usually the way we'll do in our office, our insurers will contact us and say, hey, if something's happened, I've got a claim. We'll call it in, set it up, and kind of turn it over, to Mercury to get to an adjuster. When they have good claim service, it's just that adjuster, they respond quickly to the insured. They're keeping the insured kind of informed through the whole process, and that customer can still keep that confidence in that company because they took good care of them when they were at a bad place, during their life. So that's kind of
okay. And then the last thing you said was rates. So help me understand, and we're going to get into a lot of detail when we walk through the process of what you do in the rater. But in general, when you say they have to have a good rate, it has to be competitive. What does that mean? Kind of how close can rates be? And you say, they're similar enough. Then where's the gap where you say, that one's not competitive anymore?
Well, if we're looking at the rate, of course, as I said before, we'll bridge over. But if you've got companies, and you've got between $25, $50 between two companies. Let's say it's Mercury and another one. You look at, okay, is this a better fit? Do I feel like... So then that's where you go in and look at it. So if it's $25 or $50, just depending on who the other company is at the time, or if you feel like Mercury is going to be just better suited, or whichever company is going to be better suited for the insured, I will look at both of those companies to see which one I feel like I should put the insured in. And sometimes it comes down also to the fact, so I've got a company that's $25 or $50. I'll look at both of them, because sometimes you have it where it's like underwriting guidelines. For example, Mercury will exclude a driver, usually, and some companies won't. Because, sometimes you have people that have drivers in the household and they don't need them driving their vehicle because they have their own insurance. So you have to play that into a factor as well. But definitely, if it's $25.50, we will consider another. Now, if you get $100, if Mercury's $100 less than whoever the next one is, I'm going to look at Mercury. Mercury, more than likely, unless something comes up when I bridge over, that's the one I'm going to go with to give the insurer the quote.
And I'm assuming these are annual numbers you're talking about, or as opposed to monthly?
Monthly, they're 6 months.
But all right, so it's like a 25 to 50 over a 6-month period, as opposed to like the monthly payment. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to ask because everybody's different. Everybody has a different kind of tipping point, and I want to see, are we talking monthly or longer period than that?
Yeah, because overall, because if you break down like $50 or $25, $50 over 6 months period, it's not that much money in the grand, scheme of things. So
right, but then you start looking at what's the best fit at that point. Yep. So now I want to get a full sense of all the carriers you work with. So obviously Mercury. Who else do you work with on personal auto?
We work with auto owners and Progressive and Grange, Foremost, a company called Southern Mutual. I think Travelers. We have them, and we have Nationwide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So, looking across these carriers, who gets most of your business? Is it kind of equally spread out, or are there 1 or 2 or 3 carriers who get the bulk of your personal auto business?
It does vary. The bulk of it oftentimes will go with auto owners, and then I would say Progressive.
So if you had to put roughly a percentage, or it doesn't even have to just roughly, like, does auto owners get half? Do they get 30%? Like, how does it roughly break down across those two companies?
Across those two companies, I would say auto owners may get 40%.
Okay. And then Progressive gets?
They get a lot of it, because usually if they're not a fit in some Progressive tends to be more, and Mercury kind of is this way too, if people have not had prior coverage, they have a market for that as well, like I said, as Mercury does. So sometimes that's going to be your driving force. So they might get, it might be even a higher percentage that they get. It just depends.
Okay. So that really, if they're getting maybe 40 or more, that's really the bulk of your. Am I right in hearing that the bulk of your business is with auto owners and Progressive?
You're right. Yeah, it is.
And so then, is there an equal split among the others, or does one of the rest of those kind of get a little bigger chunk than others?
Travelers will probably be the next biggest one, and maybe Southern Mutual after that. And then Nationwide and Grange would be the least out of those, and then Foremost would be actually the least in Grange. And then I just realized we have Allstate as well. They would be the lowest.
Okay.
We haven't had them as long,
So then auto owners, and Progressive at the top. Mm-hmm. Then kind of Travelers and Southern Mutual. We know Foremost, Allstate are at the bottom. Where does Mercury fall in there? Like roughly how much of the business is Mercury?
Mercury would come before Travelers. So I would say Auto Owners, Progressive, and Mercury.
And do they get, 5%, 10%, roughly?
We'll say 10%.
Okay. All right. So we'll kind of focus on those. So let's look across for now, Mercury, Auto Owners, and Progressive. And I want to get a sense of how each of these carriers does on all these things that you just said are really important to you. So let's start with stability. So, getting that A or A+ rating, Mercury, Auto Owners, and Progressive, how do they stack up on stability?
Auto Owners is top, definitely, because they're A++, and Progressive probably second, and Mercury's probably third.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But as you said, you're not going to work with them if they're getting too low. So all these carriers, I would assume, are at some level that's appropriate for what you want.
They're A or above. Yeah.
Okay. So how about coverage? You talked about some of the areas where Mercury is lacking in terms of not having full glass coverage on comprehensive, that kind of thing. How do Auto Owners and Progressive do on coverage?
Auto Owners is excellent on their coverage. They do offer that full glass coverage. Progressive is good on their coverage. I would say they're probably equal with Mercury on that, on the coverage.
Equal with Mercury, okay. Mm-hmm. So am I right in hearing that Auto Owners kind of stands above on coverage?
They do, yeah.
Okay, they do. How about on response to claims? How's Mercury do on that?
They'll do really good on that, yeah. Yeah, we really, most of the time I only hear good things. I was trying to think if I've heard any not complaints, but any issues, and I think every time we've had one, he's been very well to respond. Our Mercury's been very well to respond and take care of the insured. Okay.
How about Auto Owners?
They're fantastic as well.
Is there anything in particular that they do that makes them stand above the rest?
No, they just, they're very good about contacting and keeping in touch with them. Now, one thing I would say with Mercury on claims, and I know this may get back into another part we haven't got to, but the only thing I don't like as far as the claims with Mercury is setting it up is a little bit more difficult than I was with Auto Owners or some of our other companies. And also, I think it could be different. This comes under the website itself. If it could just be easier to find your claim information, where there has been contact by the adjuster to the insured, and they could maybe put some type of notes or something, because a lot of times what will happen, the claims adjuster, they'll do a great job, but then the insured will call in and be like, oh, I haven't heard anything from the adjuster, but then some companies you can go in the notes and you can say, well, the adjuster called you on this day, and the insured just didn't get the message or just didn't see the call, but you can tell the insured, well, they did call you, so they feel like, well, they're still taking care of me, I just missed them, so that would be a really good thing to add.
So are you saying that information isn't there at all, or that it's hard to find it?
I don't see it at all with Mercury. Last time, usually with a claim, the only thing I see now, we have started receiving claim notices via email. They'll let us know a claim's open and kind of what happened with that claim. But yeah, we will get the adjuster's phone number and their extension. But other than that, there's not any notes or memos out there that we can see on our side as agents.
Okay. How about Progressive? How do they do on claims?
They do fantastic on claims, but they actually handle all the claims themselves. They won't, as an agent, we don't handle any of the claims. The insured has to call Progressive directly.
And then does any of that ever filter back to you if there's been, a great response or a not so great response, or is it really just you're out of the picture?
we're usually out of the picture, but usually our insurers will tell you, well, they really took care of me. And I can say from personal, I had someone actually hit me that was insured, not one of our insurers, but was insured with Progressive. And when they called me, Progressive called me, I mean, they handled it fantastically. And they didn't know I was like an agent writing with them or anything. They just did a great job. I mean, the adjuster, he was quick. He got how to get a rental car. He got the rental car. He got my car repaired, payment to the body shop, no problems whatsoever. So that's what we're talking about. You know?
Yeah, right.
You have a claim going on.
You got to experience that firsthand. Exactly.
I did.
You did. So how about rates? I mean, you talked about, Mercury is typically. So you mentioned before you happen to say top 3. Are these the top 3 for rates? Mercury, Auto Owners, and Progressive, or is somebody else coming into play on price?
Someone comes in, Travelers will come into play a lot of times, and sometimes they will push Mercury down to 4th place when that happens.
Okay. How often does that happen?
Fairly often. Now, I will say, where Mercury really fits the best, when you have an insured, this is strange, but when you have an insured that has not had any prior insurance, or they have left their lapse too long where they can't get that proof of prior discount, that Mercury will often be either first or second.
And you said Progressive's also good at that. Are those the 2 that would come up?
Foremost is also another one. The other
Foremost.
And Foremost, that usually Mercury, because like I said, I'm surprised that's where it will sometimes beat Progressive by quite a bit, or sometimes it's reversed. But they do good. Mercury does good with that.
So if we had to think back through those couple of times when Mercury is kind of winning out, is that what's going on? Do they ever win out when it's not a case like that, where you don't have proof of prior or you don't have prior?
They do. Occasionally they will. So we'll say maybe half and half on when they win. Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about Travelers. You said sometimes their rate comes in really well and pushes Mercury to 4th. How are they on these other things? How are they on stability and coverage and claims response?
They're also great. They do really well. They do offer full glass with glass coverage, but they have a deductible. But yeah, their response time on claims they're also one of the excellent ones. I mean, all of our carriers are good, because if they didn't do good with the claim service, we went right on either. We want our insurers. We want them taken care of. That's what they're trusting us for. So,
right.
But no, they do a good job too.
So looking across all these carriers, sort of the ones we've talked about in detail and some of the other ones you gave me on the list, as you're saying, they're all stable, otherwise you wouldn't work with them. They all, you want to be doing right by your customers, so they've got to have all this stuff. But who does just a great job, really standout job on coverage across all these carriers? You said Auto Owners is excellent. Are they head and shoulders above everybody? Is there anybody else who maybe you don't use as often, but wow, they've got great coverage?
Auto Owners is definitely head and shoulders above everybody else. I would say after them, Southern Mutual has excellent coverage, and Nationwide does too. But still, Auto Owners, they're kind of the Cadillac of any company, because they just offer very broad on their coverages. Like even going down as simple as something like, let's say this is on the home side, but like on the home side, is for like jewelry, if you're trying to add coverage on like a ring or something like that, they just give broader options for that than some companies do. And they give that's one of them. Some companies are very funny, like with farm coverage, like if you have a goat or a horse. We're in a rural country, so when I say this, I'm like in a rural area. But if you have like a horse or a goat, and some companies are like, if you have one of those on your property, forget about it, And Auto Owners is good about allowing, like if you have just like one of those, so. That's where I think they get pushed up.
So Southern Mutual and Nationwide have excellent coverage as well. What keeps them from making it to the firms that you give a lot, too? I mean, I know you said, Southern Mutual might be sort of a little more business than some other firms, but, they have great coverage. What is it that keeps them from getting more business, those two?
Just rate. It's rate and, I'll say rate and guidelines, underwriting guidelines. Both of those have a little bit stricter guidelines than some of the companies. And auto owners can be really strict, too, especially driving history. That's a big play into that. And I know Mercury is tight, but not as strict as like Auto Owners is, or Southern or Nationwide is, or even Travelers. But I'd say still that driving factor is always that rate.
Okay. And so, we've talked a lot about auto owners standing above and beyond. They have the sort of highest ratings, great coverage, fantastic on claims. Are they always the lowest rate, or do they flip around?
They flip around, and that comes just depending on they're getting the insured and, kind of what the insured is about, because, everybody's tied into, like, your insurance score, and that plays a big factor with all the companies that we're talking about. So it definitely flips. It's just, it can go, you can have a customer and you think, well, Auto Owners will be a perfect fit, Mercury perfect fit, and you put it in and you realize, okay, that's not a perfect fit. So, yeah.
And what is it that makes you go into it saying, oh, I think they'll be a perfect fit? Like, what's this? You talked about Mercury, if, that particular case where somebody doesn't have prior insurance. What else is kind of a sweet spot for a Mercury where you might think, yep, Mercury's going to, whether that ends up being the case or not, but you go into it thinking, yeah, Mercury would be a good fit for that scenario?
It could be that they say, well, if they've had prior coverage, or the insurance says they've had prior coverage and says they haven't had any claims, going into, and this could be for any company, but you're like, okay, well, they'll be a good fit for Mercury or, one of the companies, and you get in there and you find, well, they have had a lapse in insurance, or they have had a claim, a ticket or a claim that changes the factors really fast. So I would say that's what kind of happens.
That happens. Okay. Great. So walk me through, if you could, the process. And I know we've kind of talked a little bit about this, but I'd love to just get it in detail. The process that you go through and kind of getting from point A to point Z. So somebody comes to you and they need personal auto insurance. Kind of what information are you getting from them? At what point do you go to the rater? What do you do there? And then what do you do after the rater? So walk me through that process if you could.
Okay. If they come in, we have a form already set up, because every company has like their own questions. Like Mercury has a question. Have you had a felony in the last 10 years? Different. Have you filed bankruptcy? Like different questions like that. So like I said, every company's a little different, but we try to kind of comprise them all together, so we're covering all of our companies when we're, rating, because again, when they come in, you're not sure who they're going to place into. Sometimes you can tell, sometimes, most of the time you can't. So we have all our questions. You get their personal information, you got to get their vehicle information, if they have had prior insurance, who they're insured with, making sure you have all the driver's information, if there's any drivers that need to be excluded, whether they don't have a driver's license or driving age, people that live in the house or their driving age, or do they have their own insurance and they don't need to be listed on this policy. So we get them to complete a form, or we go over the form with them, and then once we have that, we plug that information into the rater system, and then that's when we pull through all the companies, or if there's someone that hasn't had prior insurance, then we limit it to the 3 we talked about, because other companies won't. They don't offer coverage for that. And after we do that, we go in, we bridge, we order the reports, making sure, driving history, checking their insurance score. And once we have our rate, we'll call the insured, or if they're still in the office, we'll give them the quote. And then, depending on, either they'll take it then, or they'll say, no, I found something else, or they'll say, let me call you back, I'll think about it. And then if they call us back, that's when we close the deal and issue the policy for them.
All right, that's great. So that's super helpful. A few questions, if I can take you back through that.
Yeah.
You're having them fill out this form, and I like the way you put it. You take all the questions to the extent you can from all the different carriers you work with, so you'll be covered for the things that they might need, right?
Right.
Are you asked? And you said you ask things like felony record. Are you asking about accidents, tickets, motor vehicle, that kind of issue at this point, or no?
We do. We will ask them if they've had any losses, and most people, some people remember, some people forgot that they had something, especially if it's been a little time back. And then, of course, the driving record will show, and then oh yeah, I did have that.
Oh, I forgot about that, right?
Yeah, I don't blame you. Sometimes you do want to push back and forget about, but yeah,
right.
We do try to, because I know we're even though we're agents, we're kind of still that field underwriter, so it's our job to make sure we're putting them where they'll fit and they won't have any problems with the company or for the insurer, because we want it to be an easy process for everybody involved. And that's why we
get off on the right foot.
Yeah. Exactly.
Makes sense. Let's hang on a second. I'm going to turn that. Okay, great. So then you said you go to the rater, and you said you put everybody in the rater unless it's a case where they don't have prior, and then you only put in, would it be Progressive, Mercury, and Foremost?
Foremost, correct. Yes.
Okay. But in other cases, you put everybody in.
Everybody in,
Okay. And what rater do you use?
Easy Links.
Okay. And just help me understand, what's the benefit of, except for those certain cases, what's the benefit of putting everybody in the rater?
The benefit is that you don't have to go to each individual company, because it can really take a lot of time if you have to do that. So it just saves us a lot of time having to do that.
Okay. All right. So you put everybody in, and you said, okay, eventually you're going to bridge and run reports. But before you get to that point, how do you decide where you're going to bridge? What do you do to decide where you're going to go?
Well, that's where we just look at who is the top rate. So if, like, Mercury came up the top rate, and then we look at the next one, because we're like, well, if we go in Mercury and it ends up like it is higher, where are we going to go? Have a plan B, kind of. So once we have that top one, we just go in, and that's when we start bridging over and running those reports and everything.
So you bridge just to the lowest cost to start with?
To start with,
Okay. And like you said, you have a plan B. So if, for example, if you go through to your lowest cost and then you make adjustments and it ends up not being the lowest cost, then you'd go to the second lowest? Is that kind of how you do it?
That is, yeah, because sometimes it can happen that way, and then it turns out it is lower than the lowest one the rater was.
Suddenly it gets a different spot. Okay.
Right.
Let's see. What I was going to ask is if you go to the lowest and you bridge, just so I'm super clear, how does that bridging happen? Do you just click a button in the rater and you're there, or do you have to kind of get out of the rater and log into the other the carrier's website?
Well, with Mercury, it's supposed to be able to click a button and bridge over into it, but sometimes that's kind of, I think, a flaw with the site. You have to actually, I've had to log into Mercury itself, like go to the web page, log in, then go back to the rater and try to pull it that way, and then sometimes I can't even get it to pull like the quote up. So the rater gives you like a quote number, and I have to go back into Mercury and plug that quote number in sometimes to find it. So Mercury is a little bit more difficult to bridge over than some of our other companies.
So are you having to kind of repeat yourself, like stuff you've already put in, you've got to put in again?
Well, usually just have to put in that quote number. There's a place in Mercury where you can key that in, and it usually will pull it up, but sometimes it does not want to cooperate. So.
Okay. And are you saying that's different from other carriers?
It is, yeah. Most carriers, if you just click on them, they'll take you right into the company. I mean, you might still have to just search the quote, but it will pull up like really quickly, versus Mercury doesn't always pull that up really quickly. Usually you have to work with it to get to it. Okay.
You said you run reports. What reports do you run?
That would be the Clue report and the MVR. Because the insurance score report, that's already pulled once you go through the rater, because you have a question. They ask you, and we let insurers know we're doing that. Because you have to let them know that, you're going to pull these reports. We go ahead and tell them that. And so you can say yes in the rater, and it will pull that portion, and then the other will have to go into the companies to do the MVR and the Clue.
Okay, and so you're going to bridge to that first that's lowest, and you're always going to run the MVR and clue there. Is there ever any reason where you say, well, I know I eventually want to bridge over to this carrier, but I'm going to run the MVR somewhere else for some reason?
Sometimes we have one company that does not charge for the MVR or the clue report. So if that is where we have quoted, like if someone that has had insurance and we quoted them, then we'll run it through there, try to pull the MVR through there, because if you've got a company that they're more strict on like the driving record, and if you go to a company that won't charge you for the MVR and you see they've had several speeding tickets or a DUI or something like that, you don't know, well, I can't even go in this company, so it's no need of going in there running that MVR and being charged for something you're not going to use.
So how do you know to do that or not? I guess I'm confused because it sounds like it would be great to go to the one that doesn't charge you, but how do you know whether you should just go to the lowest cost and do it there or go to the one where they don't charge you?
Well, sometimes, and it depends on who's the lowest cost there again, because now if it's someone that hasn't had insurance, the one that doesn't charge you for the MVR, they're not going to pull, so that's not going to be an option. And they actually sometimes, depending on the person, some of the characteristics of the insured, they won't always pull an MVR on the insured, like they just don't. They don't think they need to, so then you wouldn't have an option to even pull an MVR. But most of the time we have to just go into that company. When you've looked at everything looks good. And now Mercury, which this helps a lot, I will give Mercury a gold star for this, where they will let you order the clue report before you order the MVR, because the clue report they don't charge, so they have gotten that. And if if your clue comes up and you see they're clear on their accidents, there's more chance that they're going to be clear on their tickets. But if you've got accidents, you're probably going to have tickets too. It's usually kind of goes hand in hand.
So if you see the clue, if you go to Mercury, let's say, and you run the clue report, which they don't charge for, and you see that it looks pretty good, might you not run the MVR at all?
If it still looks good, I will. If it still looks good in Mercury, let's say they came at best rate, it still looks like they're going to be the best rate after we run the clue, I'll go ahead and run the MVR, because that's kind of my final step before I'll give the insurer the quote. So to make sure I have, and we go ahead and run it. I know some agents, not in our office, but I've heard some companies don't run that. But if you don't run it, you don't know if that's going to be the correct price, to give an insurer. So we try to get everything lined up so they know exactly what they're going to get or what they're going to have to pay.
Okay. So when you go through all that and you're ready to tell the client, like you said, either they're in your office or you give them a call or whatever, are you giving them one option or are you giving them multiple options?
We'll go with as far as multiple companies.
Yeah.
We'll do the one quote, because that quote came out to be the lowest, and that's everybody wants the lowest price, so we'll just do the one.
So is there ever a case where someone at that point goes, oh, I don't like that company, or for whatever reason, I don't want that company, I want somebody else?
We have had that happen, and then we'll give them the next best rate that we had.
And what's that usually based on? Why do people say they don't want a certain company?
Most of the time it's because they've been with that company before, and for whatever reason there's some different reasons they didn't like them, or sometimes it could be because someone they knew was based with that company and they just didn't like that company, and so they just don't even want to go there.
Does that ever happen with Mercury? That you present Mercury as the one option and someone says, no, I don't want to go with it?
I don't believe, I have had people that have been with Mercury. Yeah, that has happened with current customers that we had them at Mercury one time, and then because the rates went up with Mercury, we moved them to another carrier. Okay. And then when that carrier's rates go up, Mercury's now a better option. It could be 6 months, a year. It could have been, time period. They'll be like, no, I don't want to go with Mercury because
they had the higher rate before.
Yeah, that sometimes happens. Yeah. And sometimes we do take people back, and they're perfectly fine with going back. So it varies.
And does anybody ever, right at the outset when you're just getting their information, say, oh, I like a certain carrier, or I don't want you to look at a certain carrier, or are they just not thinking that when they're giving you that information at the beginning?
Usually they don't think that. Every now and then we'll have someone that will ask. I believe we have had one person ask for Mercury. I know we've had people ask for Progressive because Progressive is very popular, especially with Flow. Everybody knows who they are. So sometimes we will have some. We'll just run it through Progressive. But usually we'll be like, well, we have several carriers. We're welcome just to run it through, if it's Progressive or Mercury, or do you want us to go ahead and shop it through all of our carriers to see if that company would be the best rate, or if we have it better? And they'll usually say, yeah, look for me. That's no problem.
Okay. So I've got a really clear sense of kind of what you do and what you're thinking about and how Mercury fits in terms of how often you're they're the lowest price or you're quoting them and winning the business. Would you say you are typical of your agency in that regard, or does everybody have a different kind of philosophy or a different way of doing it?
No, we're typical. We all do it the same way.
They all do it the same way. So if I were to call somebody else and say, how does Mercury fall out for you? And they'd probably give me pretty similar numbers. It's all kind of the same.
Yeah, they would.
And they typically will do the same bridging process, meaning they'll bridge to the lowest, have a plan B in their back pocket, ultimately present. Okay, great. So you're ultimately doing the same thing. Great. I think we talked a little about this, but I just want to make sure in terms of, you were talking about how certain things can come into play that, like we were just saying, you have to have a plan B in mind because you go with your plan A, but the cost changes when you've bridged over. How often does that happen, and does it happen more with certain carriers than others?
Let's see. It's not, I would say it's less than 50% of the time that it happens. And usually the factor is that you just get into a company and that person does have a lot of things on their record. That will usually what's going to be your driving factor. But I wouldn't say any company over another does it. I'd say they're kind of equal across the board on that.
Okay. One thing we haven't really talked about yet is the idea of commissions and incentives. So I want to get a sense of what role do those play, and how does Mercury stack up?
As far as that, they're not. When I say this, we're always thankful for business, and we are business, but they don't play a role. Commission doesn't play a role into the point that I'm going to choose. Let's say Mercury was offering a higher commission rate than somebody else. I'm not going to choose an insurance company because I'm going to make more money on that policy than if I go with somebody else, if that rate, if it's not the best fit for the insured. Our philosophy is always the insured always comes first. So that doesn't affect us. As far as the percentage of Mercury, they're in there about the same of all the other companies.
Okay. So I want to talk a little more about the system itself. So we talked about, sometimes there's some additional challenges. Let's say when you've got Mercury in the radar and you want to bridge over, and you've got to kind of find that quote number and put that in, and other carriers are easier. I want to make sure I understand all the elements of that system. So what else can you tell me about when you bridge over to Mercury? What is that experience like, and how does it compare to other carriers?
It is not the best experience, I can honestly say. Compared to other carriers, let's see, if I know that when we were setting this up and David Lyons, the person that set me up for the interview, he had asked me on a scale of 1 to 7. I said overall Mercury ranks a 3. And a lot of that was playing into the website, the user-friendliness of the site itself. When you're trying to do a policy, make changes, it's very complicated compared to some of the others. Now, Mercury used to have a different website. That thing was even worse. But going in, you have to, as I said, with that easy link, sometimes it's very difficult bridging it over. You have to hunt down your quote. And then when you get into it, it's not as easy to get to do everything. As some, I will tell you, who has the easiest is Progressive. They have a fantastic website, mainly because when you go into it, kind of everything's like almost on one page, or it's very simple to get. You know, you can kind of see an overview really quick of the policy. Versus Mercury, you see part of an overview, but it's just not friendly at all.
Not friendly. So you said they used to have a different system and it was worse.
Oh.
Worse how? Like what? When was this changed, by the way?
Let's see. That has been changed. I believe it's been about 4 years ago. It may have been a little longer than that. And they had two separate systems you had to go to. It was really, really bad. So you had to go to one. Let me remember now. One was for like claims, and one was to do a few, pull documents and make payments. Or no, I'm sorry, that was pull documents. And this other one they had, it was called Quicksilver, was this little screen that popped up, and it was a total nightmare when you go in. It was almost like, you know, banks, some companies have like the black screens, and you type on the black screen. It was almost like that. That's how bad it was. And when you try to bridge over a quote, and you run a quote, when you run the reports, NVR, everything ordered at the same time. You didn't have an option of just doing the clue report. You had to do everything. It will come up, and let's say someone had a claim. You would have to assign a name to the claim. So if it was like a comprehensive claim, you would have to put CP, or if it was collision, you have to put CO. But you would have to figure out what went with what. And sometimes I have to call the company to get me to call Mercury, but what do I put on here? So it was bad.
So it was worse. It's still bad, but it's a little better than it was in that respect.
Little better, yeah. Because your billing screen, you didn't even have, because you know you can do agency sweep as an option. They didn't even have that. And to make a payment, like cash payment or check payment, you had to key in everything. Like it was bad.
So does that keep you from bridging to Mercury?
It could. If the website definitely can, if you have, and it's very rare this happens, if you have someone equal with Mercury, so let's say Progressive was equal with Mercury, you could tend possibly to go with Progressive over that. But as I said, that is rare that happens. So I mean, if Mercury still comes up the best rate, we're just going to persevere and go through the website and try to get that, get the quote.
And then, with the system being maybe more difficult to use and not sure where everything can be found easily, have you ever been concerned about errors or confusion kind of leading to a rate at the end of the day that's not accurate?
No, it's not quite. It's not that confusing to that point. I mean, they do pretty good when it comes to now that, like if you've made a change or if you rated something. It has some positive aspects. I don't want to be too negative on them, but
so what do they do? So let's take the flip side. What are the positive aspects? What do you like about the system?
My favorite thing about the system, I would definitely say, is when you do make a change on the existing policy, you pretty much get instant paperwork, like an instant declaration page. So you have instant proof of you have your insurance card, and the billing updates immediately. Those are the biggest positives of the whole site to me.
Okay. And do those stand apart from other carriers, or does everybody do that?
No, that does stand apart. Not all of them do that. Some are getting where they do. Progressive does. So they're the best on that. But yes, that's a huge factor, because sometimes people need that, especially if they have a car that has like a lien holder. You need proof pretty much immediately, not 24 hours later.
Right.
So yeah. So that is a wonderful feature.
So, we talked about Progressive has the best. Mercury's isn't great, but it's better than it used to be, but it's still really bad. Who else, I guess what I'm trying to get at is Mercury's system tough and everyone else's is easy, or are there other carriers that also have a system that's just harder to work with?
There are other carriers that are harder to work with. Allstate's the hardest that we have.
So they're harder than Mercury?
Yeah, they're a little harder than Mercury even. So
what makes them kind of move down a notch on that?
their bill inside and just doing a quote in them is just a lot. It's very, and they've improved a little bit as well, but it's very hard to get into. I mean, it kind of looks like Mercury's old system, so it's just not good.
How about auto owners who you use a lot? What's their system like?
Their system, it is good. They don't update quite as quickly as Mercury does as far as when you make a change or Progressive, but yeah, I would rate them. They're probably second on user-friendly, right under Progressive.
Okay, great. So I just want to get some numeric ratings from you. So I want you to think about on a 1 to 5 scale, where 1 means you're not at all familiar, and a 5 means you're very familiar. How familiar are you with Mercury Insurance?
A 5.
A 5. And then how familiar would you say, that customers in general are of Mercury?
I would say probably a 3.
3? Let's do the same for auto owners. How familiar are you, and how familiar are customers?
I'm a 5. Auto owners, they're probably a 3.5, maybe 4.
Okay. How come there's a little more familiarity out there of auto owners compared to Mercury among them?
Because they've been around a little longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and how about Progressive? Same question. 5-point scale for you and for customers for familiarity.
I would say 5 and 5.
Okay, and Progressive gets a 5 because?
Because they do advertise so much, and they have Flow, and everybody knows who Flow is. So, yeah, I think it's just because they do put a lot into their advertising, and you about cannot watch TV more than a few minutes and not see a Progressive commercial. So.
Right, exactly. Okay. So now a different scale, and this one is trying to get at how confident you are. So if you're placing a customer, in an auto policy from one of these carriers, I want to find out how confident you are in the experience from your standpoint and from the customer's standpoint. So again, a 1 to 5 scale where 1 is the lowest amount of confidence and 5 is the highest. How confident are you in the experience, if you place somebody with Mercury?
A 5.
Okay. What do they offer or do that makes you so confident?
It goes still back to their stability, and I know kind of what they're about, and I know that they're going to be there. So just knowing that they're again kind of what we had talked about earlier, that they'll be there for my insured when they need them. Okay. And they'll be there for me.
Yeah, and for you too. How about auto owners? Same thing. 1 to 5 scale on confidence.
5.
And Progressive.
And they also get a 5.
Okay. Now I'd like you to fill in a sentence for me.
Okay.
Complete the following sentence. When it comes to personal auto insurance, Mercury is... ... Complete the sentence.
It's good.
Is good.
Yeah.
Nothing but good. Any reason why they're just good?
It goes back to not that they'll take care of the insurer, but it goes back to their system. It really is a big issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fill in that same sentence for auto owners. What would you say?
Excellent.
Because
of what they offer. They offer more, and they've been around even longer, and they are easier to use as well. And I would give another thing with auto owners. I don't know if you want this yet, and this is something with Mercury too. I know because Mercury has like a 1-800 number for a claims adjuster. Excuse me, not claims adjuster, underwriter. And auto owners, we have like a group of underwriters, so we kind of get to know our underwriters a little bit. And an underwriter is such a huge part of what an agent does because you're a team trying to make sure, you're giving that insured the best coverage, and you're making sure they're fitting in the company so there won't be like any issues down the road. Like if you put a commercial gray truck on an auto policy and it's not covered on that auto policy, like your underwriter can tell you, hey, this is not something that's going to be covered. So I think that's something that is a huge lacking factor with Mercury, that you can't build kind of that. And used to, We did have some underwriters that were like in our area, so we had, I think it was 3 or 4 of them, and they were fantastic. And then it went to like a general call center. They moved everything to Florida, and now it's just like a 1-800 number. Now the underwriters are still great. Don't get me wrong; they answer my questions. But if you don't know someone, you got to know kind of what that person's about to know. Are they telling me the right information? You see kind of what I'm saying. So that is another huge factor, not having that personal relationship with an underwriter.
And do you have that with the others? Do you have that with auto insurance, auto owners, and with Progressive?
You do with auto owners. You don't with Progressive, but with Progressive, even though when you call in, their people are trained kind of to do everything. So they kind of know, like, they can answer a billing question, they can answer a coverage question. Like, they're very well trained, so you feel, not that Mercury people are not, but I don't know, you just feel a little more confident in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why not, let's complete the sentence for Progressive, too. When it comes to auto insurance, Progressive is?
I would put them, I would say very good.
Okay. Because?
Because I just put them a little bit below auto owners, just because, of course, they haven't been around as long, and they don't offer quite as broad coverage as auto owners does. But other than that,
where are some of their holes in terms of what do they not offer?
They still don't offer that full glass. That's such a big factor sometimes that. And when people have that, I just feel like they're covered more when I can offer them that, because that is a huge claim. That's almost as much as a deer's running out in front of cars as someone getting their windshield nicked or cracked. So yeah, I would say that's probably it. Other than that, they're pretty good on everything else.
Okay. So now let's do something a little fun. So we're going to pretend for a minute that there's a party. And we're at the party, and other people are at the party. But most importantly, are 3 people who are at this party. And these are insurance carriers that have been turned into people. So Mercury, auto owners, and Progressive have magically become people at a party. And what I want you to do is describe these people to me. Pretend that I'm walking into the party and I don't know anybody's name and I need to find them. So I need you to describe them well enough that I can find them in the crowd. And I want you to try not to think about people you may know at the companies or anyone who may advertise for the companies, but more it's to give me a sense of what's the personality, the vibe, just the general sense of the company. So it's really, is it a man or a woman? What is the person wearing, eating, drinking? Are they talking or listening? What are they doing at the party? So it's kind of crazy, but it's kind of fun. So let's start with Mercury. If Mercury were a person at a party, describe that person to me.
Okay. I definitely would say Mercury would be a male, a guy. Okay. And he would be wearing a suit. Okay. And he probably would, I don't think he would be really interacting. I think he would kind of just be standing off, looking, standing away from the crowd more. Okay. And as far as eating or drinking, he might be drinking a Coca-Cola.
Okay. And so he's standing off to the side. If somebody happens to come up and start talking to him, does he shy away or does he engage in conversation? What does he do?
He probably would talk to them, but he's very businesslike. Maybe not as personal.
So why is he going to this party?
He's going. He does have friends, so a friend invited him to come.
Okay.
He didn't really want to, but he
didn't really want to.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fabulous. This is great. Okay. Let's do the same for auto owners. Describe that person.
Okay, auto owners. I think that would also be a guy. But I think he would either be in a button-up shirt with rolled-up sleeves or a polo and be a little bit more relaxed. And he definitely would be, he would also be drinking a Coca-Cola and maybe eating a sandwich. And he would be interacting with people, like just seeing what's going on with them. And he also was at the party because his friends invited him.
Okay, so he's there with his friends. He's interacting more. Is he more of a talker or a listener or both? Is he a good conversationalist or is he a hog in the room?
Oh, no, he's good at conversations. We'll say he's very good. He's a good friend. Great. We'll say that.
He's a good friend.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, progressive.
Progressive, and it could be because Flo's wrapped up into that.
I know, right?
Yeah, I still see that kind of being a girl, and she's dressed. Let's see, in like she's very happy. So I would say like nice party attire, but not trash. Just party attire. Maybe some glitter in a good way, like a sparkly top and everything. And she is not eating or drinking because she is too busy talking. Yeah.
And again, is she talking and everyone is so excited to hear what she has to say, or are they trying to move away and get a word in edgewise with somebody else?
Oh, no, they enjoy talking to her. She's very fascinating, and she probably would be the hostess of the party.
Okay, so that's why she's there.
Yeah.
I love it. That's great. Thank you. That was fantastic. We get such great little tidbits out of that. I love doing that.
Welcome.
Okay, so let me see here. We've covered most of this. All right, here's something I want to do. When you were recruited to do this interview, there was a question that was asked, and I want to ask it again, and I just want to kind of hear from you what you think of the way of the question itself and kind of how you would answer it. So one of the questions we asked, it listed out 4 different scenarios, and it asked you how often you did each of these. Never, rarely, somewhat frequently, or very frequently. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to read you each one of these scenarios, and I just want to see, even though we have that already, I kind of want to just read through it and see what your thoughts are, and maybe I can dig in there a little bit.
Okay.
So the first scenario is completed a quote in your comparative rating system where Mercury had the lowest rate, but you chose not to bridge into the Mercury rating system and to sell the new policy. That scenario, have you done that? Never, rarely, somewhat frequently, or very frequently?
Let's see. If they were the lowest, that would be rarely. When you almost 100% we would go into, but there's been occasion. We'll do rarely.
So play back to me. So this is, you're saying it's rarely that they are the lowest?
Oh, no, I'm saying if they are the lowest, now lowest, that would be somewhat frequently, but like you can't go into it. And the only reason we wouldn't bridge into them if they were the lowest would just be like if we were quoting, and that would be like, since we're talking about on the auto side, but like if we were quoting auto and home, and let's say auto owners or travelers came up a little more on the car but a lot lower on the home, then I wouldn't even go into the auto on the Mercury. If Mercury was higher on the home, that would be the only time that would happen.
So that's just all right. So that's one piece of the scenario. So reading again, so it's the lowest rate in the rating system, but you chose not to bridge into the Mercury rating system and sell the policy. So how often, when Mercury has the lowest rate, do you choose not to bridge into Mercury? Would you say that's never, rarely, somewhat, or
never? That would be never. If we're just on the auto, that would be never.
So if it's the lowest rate, you're always going to bridge.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, great. The next scenario is completed a quote in your comparative rating system where Mercury did not have the lowest rate, but you bridged into the Mercury rating system and attempted to sell a new policy with Mercury. How often does that happen?
They didn't have the lowest rate. That would be, would be rare or somewhat frequent. Probably somewhat frequently. No, I would say rare. Sorry.
Okay. That's okay. So this is that they didn't have the lowest, but you bridged and attempted to sell. And is that what we were talking about before, where you're always going to bridge if they're the lowest? But it sounds like from what you're saying, most of the time you're not going to bridge into the second lowest unless something happens with the lowest.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense. Great. All right, the third scenario is completed a quote in your comparative rating system where Mercury had the lowest rate, you bridged into the Mercury rating system, but were unable to sell a new policy with Mercury. So they had the lowest rate, and you bridged, and you were unable to sell a new policy with Mercury. How often does that happen?
That would be rare.
Rare.
Yeah.
Okay. The last one is, you completed a quote in your comparative rating system where Mercury had the lowest rate. You bridged into the Mercury rating system, and you were able to sell a new policy with Mercury. How often does that happen?
That's somewhat frequent.
Somewhat frequently. So do you remember this question during the screening process? Do you remember being asked this during recruitment?
I do, yeah.
What's your recollection in terms of, is this question easy to understand, hard to understand? Like, did you have trouble answering it? Tell me if you can remember kind of what your response was when you were asked this question.
Let's see. I know on question 3, let's see, question 1, I may have said rare. I know I said never this time. Question 2, I believe I said somewhat frequently on that one. I thought on all these I said somewhat, possibly.
Yeah, you said somewhat on everything except for the first one. And it really isn't about that. It's more, I'm trying to get a sense of, do you feel like when you were asked the question, did you understand what was being asked? And did you feel like, yes, I can give an answer? Or did you go, wait, what? Can you repeat that? That doesn't, I'm trying to understand, like, was the question easy to answer? Was it confusing?
Oh yeah, it was. It definitely was.
Okay.
And if I changed it, it's because I was thinking a little more detail since like he asked me the question. Now you're asking me, and after we talk, because there again, it depends on, if it's just on auto, it's a different answer versus if you're looking at Mercury auto and home.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very different. Yep. Would you say to date Mercury Insurance has exceeded, met, or not met your expectations when it comes to personal auto insurance?
I would say met.
Met?
Mm-hmm.
What would they need to do to exceed your expectations?
Work on their website.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if Mercury were to have a competitive rate, always, let's say if they were always able to come up either as the lowest rate or close enough to the lowest that they were in the ballpark, what 3 things would Mercury have to do to try and get more of your business?
Well, if they always had the lowest rate or right there the lowest one, they wouldn't have to really do anything because we would go with them.
Even though the system is difficult.
Right. Yeah, we still would persevere through that because there again, what drives us is trying to make sure we're giving the insured the best we can.
So if you think about right now, kind of the number that you're giving, number of policies you're selling to Mercury right now, how would that be impacted if Mercury always came up with the lowest rate or maybe the second lowest rate? How would that impact the amount of business you do with them versus other carriers?
I mean, if they came out the best over everybody, they would increase by a lot.
Okay.
I don't know. I have to go back and look at if some of our quotes here again could have been home and auto, so that those, I know we got to throw those out for this, but so I know that it definitely would increase. I don't know if it might increase by 50%. It might be higher than that, just depending on.
And finally, I've asked you a whole bunch of questions. Is there anything that you either, want to make sure that you share with me, or, is there something you think, wow, how come she didn't ask me this? Is there anything you wish I'd asked you? Like, what else do you want to share before I let you go?
No, there's not anything that I can think of that you should have or wish you had asked. I will say go in there to their site, something to put in. Definitely, the billing side is the hardest part. I would say that has improved, but a few things does definitely need to be improved, or maybe they can at least look at it. And that's just where it can give a little bit more power to the agents as far as like setting up where you can go in and set a policy up on auto draft, or you can go in and change a date, because like some companies will let you go in and like if someone is due for a payment or it ain't quite got due but they need like a few more days to make that payment, you can go in and bump their date up a little bit so they have a little bit more time, so it avoids them having to get into like a cancellation status. That would be very helpful as well. And also when you make a payment, the receipt comes comes up, which you can print it there, but if you, let's say we've had the screen freeze or shut down, or you accidentally backed out of the screen, you can't get back to that receipt to do a reprint. So that's a huge factor.
Okay.
There.
That is. Now, one thing I didn't ask you before is, we've talked a lot about Mercury for personal auto because obviously that's the focus today. How are they on home? Are they competitive? Where do they stand on home?
They're not competitive right now. They have not. It's been about 4 years ago, they took like a huge rate increase. They took 25% rate increase for 3 consecutive years on their homes. And that really changed the market for them, I believe, on their homes. And we have a hard time placing it, at least in our area. So they're not. We haven't seen a good competition. Now they're good if they fit, their coverage is good, if their rate could come back down, their coverage is really good. I like the home product very well, but it's just that rate just keeps us from being able to do anything with that.
So who tends to win your home business?
That would be auto owners, travelers, and Nationwide. Nationwide. Those are and then Southern Mutual will win it some too, but yeah.
Great. Well, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much on behalf of Mercury Insurance and our firm, Helico Research. Thank you so much for taking the time and just your thoughtful responses and kind of giving us a little window into your world today. It's been really helpful. We will let Smith Research, that's the firm that recruited you, we will let them know that you completed the interview, and they will process your honorarium in whatever way you had agreed upon with them. All right?
All right, that sounds good. Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate your time too. And hey, maybe Mercury will listen to us, right?
Well, that's what we're going for. Thank you so much for your time, and you have a great rest of the week.
Oh, thank you. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.